So, it was a blistering hot day in July. Thousands of excited citizens gathered at the new Capitol to celebrate the raising of the nation's newly sewn flag. After long and costly battles on many fronts, they were finally free of colonial rule. The day was July 5th, 1975, and it was Cape Verdean Independence Day. And that's today. Now, I can only imagine that when I first started describing the scene, you naturally thought of July 4th and our Independence Day, which was celebrated yesterday. Why wouldn't you? We're in America, and generally speaking, we tend to centralize ourselves and our communities in the narratives that we tell, the narratives that we experience. But besides their outstanding performance in the World Cup and the fact that today is July 5th and that I am Cape Verdean, which I am, I chose to talk about Cape Verdean Independence Day to start us off as an invitation for those of us in unity to look beyond the surface ideas of independence as they pertain to our physical liberties and toward the divine ideas behind every principle that we aspire to as spiritual beings having a human experience. And one of the best ways to do that is to decentralize ourselves. According to his book, Heart-Centered Metaphysics, Unity Heart-Centered Metaphysics asserts, this is Paul Hasselbeck, I should say. Unity Heart-Centered Metaphysics asserts and recognizes that divine ideas are the fundamental, eternal truth that underlie and transcend all physical manifestation. Divine ideas are spiritual patterns that pertain to all of us. And you'll hear me say all of us several times, but it pertains to all of us. They are all the components known to our mind that constitute what we call good. The most essential and basic of all divine ideas are what we now experience as our 12 spiritual powers, which we've talked about in many services, and this month, in fact, is the power of understanding. So, again, divine ideas are spiritual patterns that pertain to all of us. So there's no like who's in all. All is all. And I know that as spiritual as I try to be all the time, or most of the time, a lot of the time, sometimes I have a hard time with the all of us part, especially when some of the all of us think some of us are less than other alls. You get what I mean? But then I remind myself that all is all. And it doesn't help, I'll say. I've been studying a lot of unity principles and things because I'm in classes right now. And one of the things I was reading was from Charles Fillmore in Keep a True Lent. And he says this. He says that divine love is impersonal. It loves for the sake of loving. It's not concerned with what or whom it loves, nor with a return of love. Think about that. We live in a very transactional society. So to think that you're going to give all your love and maybe you won't get anything back, sometimes we don't like that deal. But that's what he's saying. He's saying that it, like the sun, its joy is in the shining forth of its nature. Love is that mighty power, that divine quality of God that is expressing through all humankind and cannot be suppressed by any outside force. Now that one's any outside force. Think about what that means. That means that you can give someone all the love you have. They can give you not only not return that love, but maybe give you less than that love, maybe even the opposite of what you've given. And that love that informs you, in theory, won't be diminished. Because you're not giving it to get something back, you're giving it because it's shining forth from the reality of who you are, the divine idea behind love itself. And so that's a lot. But again, he says love is that mighty power, that divine quality of God that is expressing through all humankind and cannot be suppressed by an outside force. So when I read this, I can't help but hear echoes of what Jesus taught in Matthew 22, 36 to 40, when he was asked, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And this is what he said. He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind," like with your total being, everything that you are. Love God like that. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, meaning it's the same thing. This is the same thing that I'm saying right now. It's love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments. And then other place in Matthew, he's gone through the Beatitudes. He's telling us, blessed are the poor, all the things that our brains don't typically go towards. And then he says something that's really hard. He says, you've heard that it was said, love your neighbors and hate your enemies. Love your neighbors, hate your enemies. Sounds easy. But he says, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Hard. And been abused a lot. That teaching's been abused a lot. So he talks about how the sun rises on the evil and the good, and the rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous. And then he says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Aren't the tax collectors doing that? And when he said tax collectors, there's a lot more to it, but either way, not too many people talk about tax collectors. But aren't they doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your Creator is perfect. Be perfect. That's a lot to ask. To say, be perfect. Love everybody with all the love you have. Maybe you'll get less than nothing in return. Maybe you'll feel like no one cares for everything you've given, but give it anyway, because it's not about what comes back. It's about what you give, and what you give comes from the awareness of who you are, the divine idea that's resident in your being, in everybody's being, in all of our beings. And when you wake up to that, it actually does something to you. When you really wake up to it, you can't help but want for others what you desire for yourself. Maya Angelou said it like this. The truth is, no one of us can be free until everybody is free, because we know that we're all interwoven. We know that we're all interconnected. We know that we're a part of an intricate web of mutuality. And when we come to that awareness, this is what love does. So let's think about this when we listen to these words from our nation's Declaration of Independence. So it says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires they should declare the cause which impelled them to the separation. Then he goes on to say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all, and it says men, we know it means all humans, or that's, you know what I mean? All humans are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Again, all. And even though the initial part of that beginning talks about separation, the divine idea that undergirds it says that it is self-evident. No one has to tell anybody else that we're all created equal. And when we don't create or treat people as if they're equal, it takes something away from us. Everything that we hold back from other people, we deny to ourselves. And likewise, everything that we receive for ourselves, we give to others. That's the divine idea. So there's that word all again. And it just keeps showing up. But then there are people whose all is really small. So I want to show you an image. I don't know if you all are familiar with this image. It came out yesterday, 4th of July. Down in DC, one of my friends actually shared the image first and said, look what's happening in my neighborhood. And it was Patriot Front, which is basically a white nationalist movement that was marching, and they had Confederate flags, American flags, and a lot of other things that say, our all is really small, and we don't have the big all that y'all have, right? And so that's where they were emerging from. And this image says so much, because this singular black woman is sitting here surrounded by people who don't value her presence, don't value her existence. And then at the same time, they're honoring something that says all people are created equal, that it's self-evident. And so that means that they're denying something that is self-evident, denying something that they know, denying equality. And when you deny equality to others, you deny it to yourself as well, whether you're conscious of it or not. And so unity, I don't have a problem saying that we should know better and that we do know better. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to name it. because we know that the divine idea of all is not open to interpretation. All means all. And so when we honor the divine ideas of freedom and independence, and we don't leave anyone out because we know that what we give to others is what comes back to us. And if we we don't believe that the freedoms that we desire for ourselves are evident in other people, that's not in alignment with our principles. And so there's this saying that says, if you believe in freedoms for yourself but don't care if it applies to everyone, what you actually love is privilege. You know? And this invitation for us is to be mindful of that, to give what we know and to give it freely. But acknowledging this doesn't mean that we always remember, and I know that I always don't. I forgot when I saw that picture, and then I had to remind myself. And I had to think about some of the things that I've been reading. And one of them, again, comes from Charles Fillmore. It says, the realm of God, mind, is divine ideas. All things rest on changeless divine ideas. Thus, a divine idea behind the flower is beauty, and a divine idea behind music is harmony. Relative truth comes from our human experience of the appearance of things in the physical world. So there's this divine idea that undergirds everything, and then we look at things from the physical realm and look at things that fade and disappear and all those things, and we create a relative truth of trying to hold these relative things from the eternal mindset. And so he says, although the flower will appear and eventually fade, wither, and die, that's relative truth, the divine idea of beauty that undergirds it is changeless and timeless. And when we pray and we meditate and we sit in the silence and allow what we know to be true to emerge, we operate from that divine idea. And then if we operate from that divine idea, we have nothing to lose. But if we want to share that in the world, we have to be able to do some things that maybe it's not so easy to do. And one of them is to recognize that history is not a competition. It's just not. And we learn to look at history that way. So history, when it's seen from an objective perspective, is who, what, when, where, why, how, and who was there, and every perspective, the scene. That's objective. Herman Hesse says this. He says, to study history means submitting yourself to chaos, but nevertheless retaining your faith in order and meaning. And I don't know about any of you, but I know that just with two people, we have different views of history. And it could be about very simple things like who said who was gonna wash dishes. Wasn't me. That's how it goes. We see things differently, and it does invite in chaos, but underneath it, we have faith in an order. And imagine when you got 8 billion people seeing everything from multiple perspectives. Of course, you're gonna have chaos. But if you're operating from this divine principle, this divine idea, you see order where chaos is on the surface. You see, it's like the ocean. You see waves all crashing up top, but underneath is the still waters. So when we look at history and our stories in a different way, which is the way that we kind of get taught to do it, we usually look at it as, what can we learn from history? What does history say about me and my group? How does history inform my future or my group's future? Who is my authority on history, and what is my relationship to that authority? And so if you get a certain history and it comes at you in a certain way and these things aren't in your benefit, you're gonna experience it completely differently than someone else. And right now we operate on this principle that the victor gets to tell the story, but that's not true because it's not the whole story. It does include us all. And I'll tell you something that was very interesting to me. A lot of this, I actually learned, I went to a historically black college and university called Norfolk State in Virginia. And when I first started, I was pretty excited about going there and just seeing people from all over and everything, black people from all over the place. And I was really excited, and I walked in, and my first professor was a white guy. And I was like, and he was an African-American history professor. And I was like, this is not on my bingo card. But what was also not on my bingo card was the reason why he came and the power with which he taught us. Because he told us, you need to know your history. He had studied history broadly, and he loved history so much that he decided that the place he could have the greatest impact was to teach in an all-black school. because he wanted to have a broader sense, teach a broader sense. He wanted to teach what he had learned, and he knew that the people that would be most receptive to what he learned was people who didn't look like him. And he knew that if he taught what he knew to people who did like him, he would be seen in a negative light. And he wanted to live from his truth, so that's what he did. And I actually contacted my school because I wanted to thank him, and I found out that he had passed. But his name was Jim Proctor Brown III. And I used to think he must have like a black family at home or something, because what in the world? But he was awesome. He was instrumental, and he lived his principles. And that's something that could not be taken away from him. And he gifted so many people by that choice. And a lot of people today probably would cancel him or whatever the case may be, but he put his whole heart into teaching. And he knew that subjective history is a domain of relative truth. And it tells us the story of the victor. Impersonal divine truth does not have victors and victims. We all are sourced from one power that is always active. It's always active. And it actually becomes personal at the point of us. I learned that in my book last week in school. So the question is that now we become aware of this power, what do we do with it? Because what Marianne Williamson said is true. She said our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. Now, the first time I heard that, somebody told me it was from Nelson Mandela, and I used to quote it all the time, and I even saw in a movie they said it was Nelson Mandela, and later I found out it was Marianne Williamson, and at that time I said, should I keep quoting it? And I said, yes, I will, because it's true no matter who says it, because I had to go back and tell everybody I was wrong. It's like, remember that quote I told you? Actually, it was from someone else, but it's still powerful. It's powerful, and I love it. So we have to learn to live into that power. We have to learn to own that power. We need to walk in that power, but not just because we want it for ourselves, but because we know that it's the birthright of all of us. And that when we look at freedom and we look at independence and we look at all these things, we see them not as something that some of us have and some of us don't have, but that it doesn't belong to any of us until it belongs to all of us. And that is the energy and the spirit with which we walk. And we no longer have to run and hide and see freedom as something that separates us. And I'll kind of close out with something that Eric Butterworth said. He said that unfortunately, we have thought of freedom as an escape rather than a creative act. The emphasis has been on freedom from something rather than freedom to do or to be something. The emphasis has been on dropping out or running away, I'd add hiding. But the greatest freedom is the freedom to grow into the strong person we are created to be. Facing up to successfully coping with those things we otherwise try to escape from. Freedom is not an escape. It is the choice to be strong, to understand, to find a transcendent way. That's what we're looking for, a transcendent way, formed and informed by love, a divine idea that is changeless and of which we all are a part. And even when we live in this relativistic world, we do it from that place of knowing that we're all one. So the invitation to you is to go out and live that and remember that. Last thing, because I got to say one more thing about Cape Verde. Trevor Noah said that no matter what happened, Cape Verde won the World Cup. And I thought that was interesting. And spiritually speaking, this is exactly true and then some. It's bigger than the game. It's about the spirit behind the team. It's not about religion. It's not about a God on the side of the team that won, because we know that's all whatever it is. I'm not saying this because I'm Cape Verdean. I'm saying this because I know that behind every ideal, realized or unrealized, there's a divine and immutable principle that inspires us. And you never know it unless you give what you're called to do and do it with everything that you have in you and leave nothing on the table. And that's what Cape Verde did. And so that's the spirit behind it. There's no winners and losers. Everybody wins when you give all you have. And for us at Unity, we have a lot to give. And the world is looking and ready to receive it. And I now think of Unity as like the Cape Verde of spiritual movements. small but mighty. So go out there, be small but mighty, and live what you know is true. And so it is.